Little t trauma affects more people than big T trauma. So, trauma is not, the word trauma means that you have experienced something that is painful, deeply painful, relationally painful, organically painful.
You mean like like leaving wounds when you say organically painful? How do you
That
mean?
might be big T trauma. But most people don't suffer from big T trauma. A lot of people do, but most people not. Most people who go to therapy suffer from little t trauma, meaning we've lost the nuance in society to understand that having a mentally ill parent, having a narcissistic parent, having a parent who has borderline personality, what we talked about earlier in the show, going up and down in terms
Yeah.
of their emotions, having a mother who screams or a father who loses his temper and then the next minute is fine, having an alcoholic parent that's secretive, that no one sees except is in the family, or, all of these things are what I call little t trauma, meaning you know them in your heart and you live with them in a very secretive way, but they're not, the scars are not scars that people see on the outside. So interestingly, it's sometimes easier is not quite the right word, but society steps up for big T trauma. But for little t trauma, there's very little understanding of how it impacts a person, right? So, what I talk about with attachment security is not big T trauma for the most part. We're not talking about Romanian orphans, Charles Nelson's book Romanian
I
Orphans.
heard about these stories, yes.
We're talking about children who are deeply emotionally neglected, but have a roof over their head and food to eat, but develop narcissistic personality disorders and eating disorders and alcoholism and drug because they have suffered little t traumas. So the question is not, is therapy necessary and is therapy causing this? But what has happened in society that has changed, that is causing more people to need therapy? So I'm going to disagree with this woman's book. I do believe that there's a lot of bad therapy,
Hmm.
but I don't believe that therapy is causing the mental health crisis. I do believe that diagnosing people is not a good. So psychoanalysts don't do a lot of diagnosing.
Oh, you have this and that disorder, and you're on this
We
spectrum and that spectrum and
so
all that
we
stuff.
take the DSM, which is the book that has the diagnostic codes, and we're very light on it. If only put it on insurance forms just so our patients can get reimbursed. We don't focus. We're
Okay.
not like
Procedure-based
psychiatrists.
billing.
Yeah,
You distort
yes.
our
So
healthcare
we
system in
put
profound
I
ways.
put the mildest diagnosis because it's doesn't matter to me. It's a person, and it's a person who suffered loss or suffered little t trauma or big T trauma, or a person who's having trouble adjusting to this wacky society we live in. So society has changed. It's become a much more complicated place to grow up in
Yeah,
and to live in.
no question.
So I would say that, so you want to say that people are more screwed up because of therapy? No, people are more screwed up because society is more screwed up. And so more people need help. So what do? We have to fix society.
One of the things that I have found myself becoming over time is functionally more conservative. And here's what I mean by that. I'm going to give a definition. It's a pretty simple definition. It's like, oh, more or less the wisdom of your great grandparents was mostly right. So you could say traditional. I'm Catholic. I'm becoming more Catholic. I'm participating more. But it's like, oh, you know what? This 2,000-year-old tradition actually grappled with a lot of humanity for a long time, pretty rigorously. And I should probably not chuck it out the window, but pay close attention to it. And I don't know how much of that is just aging. I think some of it's literally just I'm getting older. Um, but some of it is, I can feel, is a response to a world that is constantly lying about reality to me and to everyone around me and to my kids, my
Mm.
kids, maybe soon to be kids. And I think the question I have for you is, when you say that, you say we've got a crazy society, compared to what? What's the
So,
not crazy
so
society?
what we did is we deconstructed. We're in the process of deconstructing society, all the institutions, all the structure. So society needs structure. We need structure and institutions like family, like faith, like gender. We need,
Heresy.
we need some structure. It could be that the structure we had was too rigid, and that's possible because we have to grow and we have to be flexible. But what's happened is it's like deboning a fish. All the bones were taken out of the fish. And that's a problem for society because all the institutions that held society, the glue that held society together, that made people feel safe. People feel safe in institutions. They feel safe in family. They feel, to a certain extent, unless you've been in a faith-based culture, it's possible. You can have trauma in a faith-based culture. So, I have people come to me and say, I can't believe you say that faith is good. I had a terrible experience. Growing up, I said, that's terrible. I feel for you. And I feel even more for you because faith could have been something so supportive, and it was turned into something so devastating and destructive, right? But we know that that's the minority, not the majority, that the majority of people, and the research shows this, that children who are raised in a faith-based family, it was a Harvard study done, do better in terms of their long-term mental health if they're raised with some faith, if they attend some religious services and their parents raise them in some faith. And that's because it's some structure, it's some, the idea, in my field, we talk about ethnocultural identity. We're trying to eliminate all identity that was part of structure, right? Religion, gender, ethnicity. We're trying to make everybody sort of like vanilla ice cream. Like everybody is fungible and generic, and
Well, it's
everybody is the
weird,
same.
right? Because we've got that, and then also hypervigilance around really, really skin deep, literally identity at the same time. So we've got a kind of like behavior is sandblasted into like a flat, plain, synthetic weirdo land. So you can do whatever you want, but what you are, that I can see from across the room, oh man, that's real important. That's the only thing we should be talking about, is what I can tell before you open your mouth. So that dynamic is very weird.
Well, that's when identity becomes calcified, and then you have xenophobia, and that's sort of what's happening too. But I think, to get back to the idea of structure, because that's the most important piece of this, is that institutions help people to feel safe in society. And we've removed all those institutions, right? Again, gender was an institution.
What does that mean when you say
Family is an
institution? Just how do you
structure, that there is structure.
So stable structure over time.
Stable structure that makes people feel that they belong somewhere.
You have been doing work around narcissism. And one of the things that seems to have risen dramatically, measurably, is we are becoming a more narcissistic society. I know there's this, what is it called? The Narcissism Index. I actually just took this recently, and I found my score went up a little bit from the last time I took it. So I was like, oh, I don't know if I like that.
You'd say it went down, not up. Yeah. Anyway, yes.
Yeah. Well, there's like this curve that's like you want to be up here, but once you start to get down to the slippy slope, I don't know about that part.
Yeah.
Help me understand how you perceive what's going on with narcissism. We've talked about it last time, but it's worth revisiting what it really is and what drives it.
Well, we talked about feminism and how that affected society. I would say the two biggest movements that really deconstructed society were feminism and the Me movement. The Me movement of the 60s was basically a movement that said, I matter more than anybody else. Now, bad therapy, by the way, can promote that. So that's what I mean by there's good therapy and bad therapy.
Yeah,
good
I'm
therapy,
focusing on my
good
feelings all
therapy
the time.
is relational. Bad therapy is what you want and you need, and nobody else matters but you. Me, right? That's bad therapy, right? The idea is that that me movement told people that individualism, that freedom to be you, freedom to be me was the most important thing. And that responsibility for relationships, for family, they no longer mattered, because what mattered was you, no one else. And what we know from development is that narcissism is a phase of development that all children go through. Children are born with a feeling of omnipotence. They have a feeling that they are the center of the universe, and that is critical to their development. If children aren't tended to in the beginning, which is a problem, because when we put our children in daycare, hand them over to other people, leave them at 6 weeks or 3 months, what we're not understanding is that for the first 8 months, a baby believes that they are the center of the universe and that you are an extension of them. So when you disappear and you are no longer tending to them and providing them with security, they don't believe that their environment let them down. They take it on themselves and believe that there's something wrong with them from the very beginning. It is the beginning of diminishing a sense of self instead of raising it up. So for the first 8 months, babies need to be basically with the belief that their mothers are extensions of themselves. That's why mothers wear them on their bodies in other countries. They keep them close. At 8 months, babies say, right, you're separate. I now see you as a separate person. You could get up and leave me. Now I'm terrified. From 8 to 18 months, they go through something called separation anxiety, where they recognize that their mothers can leave. That's also a terrible time to leave them. But we know that this omnipotence and this sense of narcissism, to a certain extent, goes straight through adolescence, because adolescence is another period of narcissism. These are developmental phases. If a child is raised with sensitive, empathic nurturing and enough of their parents' physical and emotional presence, that child will move through that period and then become more empathic, more connected to relationships, more aware of others, right? What's happening is we are neglecting our children when they're very young because we're focusing on our own desires and our own needs, whether it's our professional desires or our own personal needs. Well, I want to go on vacation for a week. I'm just going to leave that baby. Well, no, if you leave that baby's going to be little t traumatized and is going to have issues when you come back. So this kind of sense that you can do anything you want and your children will be fine has created a generation of children who are neglected. Emotionally neglected because parents are choosing freedom over responsibility, freedom to be me over the fact that that child that you brought into this world did not elect to come into this world. That child is here because you brought them into this world, and therefore you bear responsibility for the emotional well-being of that child. And that child has irreducible needs. And so we have become a society that's very selfish. And that selfishness is generationally being expressed. We have 4 generations of narcissistic personalities. So meaning they never move out of that developmental phase. They get stuck, like getting stuck in a crack in the LP record. And what we know is that narcissism just means unhealthy defenses. So we have healthy narcissism and unhealthy narcissism.
Yeah, what's the difference?
Healthy narcissism is I'm smart, I'm talented, I'm likable, I'm lovable. That's healthy narcissism. Unhealthy narcissism are pathological defenses that you have to form as a very young child to cope with not being admired, acknowledged, understood, and having a parent who's present to do those things. And so then you develop what we call the defense of grandiosity and the defense of being okay without really being okay. We are sending our kids off into the world without the internal substance that we need to. Instead, we're sending them out just with almost a superficial sense of well-being, but not the substance to back it up.
If you like this clip, you should check out the full video and all the other great content we've got at Dad Saves America. So be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and ring that bell so you won't miss our new stuff as it drops each week.